Our coverage continues on the high-stakes election in Virginia, where a majority of voters have said yes to redrawing Virginia's congressional map. The new map would also redraw every district ahead of November's House race. Joining us now to break down what this all means is Representative James Walkinshaw, who represents Virginia's 11th congressional district, which, by the way, looks quite different with this new voter legislation passing. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So we're essentially going from this 6-5 Democratic advantage to a potential 10-1 split. And, you know, we saw with the numbers as they came down, this wasn't decided by an overwhelming margin, right? So does this result, you know, justify such a dramatic shift in representation? It's a narrow number that we were seeing with the voters come down.
Well, we have to start with what's taken place across the country with Donald Trump commanding Republican-controlled legislatures in Texas, North Carolina, Missouri, now Florida to redraw their maps. And none of those states gave voters a voice. And in Virginia yesterday, we gave voters a voice and a choice. And the map that you have on the screen there was put before the voters, right? Everybody knew it wasn't a secret. They had the opportunity to look at it and review it, share their thoughts about it. And ultimately, yesterday, they decided to approve it and asked us to move forward with it. So I think, you know, Virginia voters made their voice heard last night in Virginia. It's a closely divided state. Look, obviously Abigail Spanberger won overwhelmingly in November, but that was kind of an outlier election. So winning in Virginia by 3, 4, 5 points is a comfortable win.
I wanted to ask, though, you know, we were just looking at the maps, and if you're a Republican voter in Virginia, maybe you're more of a moderate voter and you live in a rural area. I mean, is this map fair from that lens?
Well, look, I represent the 11th congressional district right now in Fairfax County, and I represent hundreds of thousands of Republican voters today, right? Even though my district is overwhelmingly Democratic, I still represent hundreds of thousands of Republican voters, and that's true in every congressional district in Virginia and in the country. Every district has Republicans, Democrats, independents, and it's up to those folks who represent those districts to do their best to represent everybody and listen to everybody.
So we were talking about your district. You just mentioned it. It includes, again, major changes under this new map. For example, voters in Rockingham County who were once in the 6th district, which is quite red, deep red, are now paired with parts of Fairfax County. And you spoke to this a bit, how you engage voters and represent those communities. But, you know, this election, we were talking to voters and it really came with some heated emotion. There was a lot of concern over it being called redistricting instead of just blatant gerrymandering. And so where do you go from here in terms of connecting with those deep red voters?
Well, look, I think one, with respect to redistricting or gerrymandering, I support, and every Democrat in Congress supports, a national ban on partisan gerrymandering. To Republicans, including my Virginia Republican colleagues who have refused to support, sometimes even voted against that national ban on gerrymandering. That's the way to move forward. Both parties agree we're going to ban it nationally, then we don't have to fight it out state by state. With respect to rural communities in Virginia, look, rural voters, rural communities have been hit hard by Trump administration policies. We got 9 rural hospitals in Virginia at risk of closing. Farmers struggling with fertilizer costs that are up 30-40% because of Trump's war in Iran. So I'm going to be having that conversation with voters across the new 11th district between now and November, and I know a lot of folks across Virginia will as well.
Well, help me reckon with what you just said, because you support a national ban on gerrymandering, and was this not just blatant gerrymandering?
Well, you can't have a situation where Democratic-controlled states do nonpartisan redistricting and Republican-controlled states gerrymander, and we have tried for decades to get Republicans to join us in opposing partisan gerrymandering. Our Republican-controlled neighbors in North Carolina, as Virginia Democrats were moving forward with the nonpartisan process, were gerrymandering Democrats there into the Atlantic Ocean. I've come to the conclusion that the only way we're going to convince Republicans, including my Republican colleagues here in Virginia, to join us in supporting a national nonpartisan, a national ban on partisan gerrymandering, is for them to learn and understand that Democrats are going to fight them every step of the way. And at best for them, gerrymandering will be a wash. They're not going to gain an advantage through gerrymandering anymore. Hopefully that will convince them to join us, sign on to our legislation to ban gerrymandering nationally.
Let's talk about where this goes. Do you think, in terms of what's coming down with courts, with legal challenges, any insight you would offer there?
Yeah, look, I'm not an attorney. Having reviewed it, they don't seem to have a lot of merit. The opposition that has been raised in the lawsuits, the Virginia Supreme Court will make a determination. I'll just say it would be a shocking thing, and the court made a decision to allow the referendum, the vote yesterday, to move forward without making a ruling. It would be pretty shocking, unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented for a court to overrule a decision that voters just made. They would essentially be taking the voters' voice away from them. I'd be shocked if the Virginia Supreme Court did that, but we'll learn soon enough.
All right, Congressman James Walkinshaw, thank you so much for the conversation and for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.